What's good, everybody? It's Frito here for ClickCats with another news roundup. Already, professional Valorant has accusations being levied of cheating and match fixing. We'll get into that. And as always, Riot Morello has had some recent live streams where he discusses many aspects of the game. First few things I want to point out, he finally does commit that the Viper buff is coming in the next patch, but I would suspect that there isn't much more in here because he also says that most of the agents feel pretty close. And they're going to see how Viper affects the controller role, as Omen has already been sort of competing in with Brimstone, and perhaps Viper being competitive as well sees the meta get pushed a little bit differently. Morello had a lot more to say, and he actually responds directly to the Hiko clip I played a few news roundups ago talking about the state of the meta and how there isn't enough utility. Morello's got a response. We'll get into that and more after the rest of the news, though. Breaking news. Riot released a new blog post that they are, I assume, turning into a series. They're calling this Ask Valorant #1, where they give answers to the community's most burning questions. Let's check out what they said. First question was, why can't I earn Valorant points in the Battle Pass instead of Radianite points? Joe Lee, revenue lead, responds in saying, I sense two separate questions here. Why you can't earn Valorant points and why we give out Radianite points in the Battle Pass. I'll break them out. So first, our goal is that when you buy a Battle Pass, you can buy it for the total value of it rather than buying it as a way of getting enough currency to buy the next one. We want the Battle Pass to be the highest value product we offer, as well as a compelling experience, but by adding Valorant points as an incentive, we hurt our ability to fund our long-term vision for the Battle Pass. As in, if you could just buy one and then farm up money for the next one, that would be less money in Riot's pockets and not really what their goal is. He goes on to say, we'll be doing more studying on the current Battle Pass to make sure that you feel it offers great value, and we'll continue to make sure that the content within it justifies the price. Now, the second question, long-term, what are Radianite points for? Our plan is to have Radianite points become the evolving currency of Valorant. So as we develop new features, we hope that you'll be able to use it to buy more gun buddies, upgrade player cards and sprays, in addition to what is currently just weapon skins. We'll make sure to offer ways to spend your Radianite points on content that is unlocked within the Battle Pass. It'll take us some time to get there, but that is our long-term vision for the product. So as a quick translation of what he's saying there, right now, Radianite points are only usable in the most premium content that Valorant has to offer cosmetics-wise. In the big skin bundles, you can upgrade the sound effects and visuals or animations of the guns. And as he says here, it sounds like there's going to be smaller upgradables that Radianite can be used to upgrade. The question that he doesn't answer here, which I know is on the tips of many players' mind, is why isn't there a way to slowly, at least, earn any Valorant points at all? Because right now, to get any skins in Valorant, you just have to pay. There is no free route other than the in-game contracts for the free skins, which are completely separate. And right now, the way it works, if there's a paywall at all, you just have to pay to get it. Next question, some unrated games have felt really unbalanced. Is it because unrated has looser matchmaking? Now, keep in mind, ranked mode is coming out early next week, so I don't think this is going to be the biggest cause of concern coming up soon for most players anyway. But the devs respond about the unrated matchmaking, saying that they say anyway that their data doesn't seem to line up with what many players have stated is a massive problem in unrated right now, where there's huge skill discrepancies in the ranks. They say they track this by looking at the actual round score at the end of the game, but also the skill discrepancy of the MMR of the players themselves getting matched. And according to them anyway, all that seems to be in line with the same limitations that they would have on competitive. Remembering that the competitive matchmaking isn't as strict as it is in other games, meaning that you can queue with someone 2 ranks apart from you in a group, where other games require that to be much closer. And then of course in unrated, you can queue with anybody. Someone as bad as me could hypothetically make friends with Hiko and play with him. And as soon as you add that kind of chaos into the unrated matchmaker, things are of course going to be much more lopsided because anybody can group with anybody in unrated and there's no limits at all. But as they said, for the most part, on average, it seems like it's emulating their competitive matchmaking anyway. I think the thing that we as a community may need to remember about unrated is that players play unrated in different ways than they play competitive and play worse or sloppier. And maybe they are really good, but just take a game off, barely trying the next one. And because of that, the unrated games can feel like a clown fiesta, I think. But that's almost the nature of not having the ranked mode in. I hope that unrated plays a little bit better when us sweaty tryhards move over to mostly playing ranked, but that's something that we'll track as time goes on. Next question I thought was quite interesting. The developers were asked, will there ever be new guns introduced to Valorant in the long or short term? They say that they have no immediate short-term plans to add new guns and feel that the current 17 guns they have feel like in a good balanced spot. As they were developing the game, they did in fact remove some guns along the way. They say adding a new gun isn't totally out of the question, but it's not something that they're planning short term, though they do seem optimistic about it, saying that as players play the game, they may discover potential gaps in the arsenal that they could fill in the coming months, but don't hold out hope for that. Last question from the blog post, they say, is there going to be an option to surrender in Valorant? And they say, yes, it'll be coming in the upcoming patch 1.02. And as a reminder, you can expect that patch to come in with ranked mode early next week. And if you want to be notified when our videos go live covering the new patch, you'll want to be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified straight to your cell phone, as we'll be breaking down all the new changes, as well as making a lot more content when that patch drops. So be sure not to miss a video. Next up, onto the drama. Ardiis is a former Fish123 player. They're the team that dominated the beta of Valorant, not losing a single best of 3 series. Ardiis often being their top fragger, even recently being stolen away from that roster to play on Prodigy with Scream and Mixwell, creating a super team in EU. But his career has a early mark on it, as evidence has been leaked tying Ardiis to communication with a cheat developer, where Ardiis verbally admits to being tempted to fix matches. What's more, the cheat developer claims that Ardiis has used a radar hack in his prior CSGO career as well, which looks to be pretty damning, but at the moment anyway, there isn't any hard and fast evidence that he's done anything more than admit to feeling tempted by the dark side, so to speak. In this long twit longer, Ardiis explains that he was going through a rough time, got dropped by his CSGO org, and yeah, when struggling to pay the bills, he did take a call to potentially participate in cheating or match fixing. But after thinking about it and realizing that it's such a crummy thing to do to your fellow competitors, as well as the massive repercussions that can come with it, ending your career and potential prison time, among other things, he says he decided not to go through with it, adding on that he wasn't proud of this low point in his life and is happy that he eventually chose to do the right thing. To solidify his non-guilty stance, he invites Valve and Riot to investigate into him, and he'd be willing to cooperate to prove his innocence, but says that there is indeed no evidence for this, and it's just a conversation recorded in an attempt to destroy his potential career for revenge. Now, I'm sure there's going to be many of us who don't take Ardiis' word for this and think he and his career should be hanged for this indiscretion. But just so that we're all on the same page here, the top NA team right now is T1, that has Brax and AZK on it, who were infamous for actually going through a match-fixing scandal in CSGO and being permanently banned from competing in Counter-Strike for their entire lives. So much so that they couldn't compete again in attack shooter until Valorant came out. So just to keep some perspective on that, recency bias can be a real thing. So depending on what yardstick you use, for Ardiis, some, if not 3 of the 5 of the T1 core would have to be looked at more closely as well. And since no one said anything about them, I think it would be a little bit unfair to quickly crack down on one of our rising stars in Ardiis off of nothing more than him flapping his gums about something he shouldn't have been doing, with no proof of whether he did it or not. Okay, that last story was a little bit heavy. Now for something extremely light to change the mood. Check out this hilarious visual glitch that turns the Prime Collection axe tiny. It's so adorable. This was shared on Reddit by Alex T. It looks so hilarious. I actually hope that Riot ends up making some jokey type cosmetics. It looks so cute when you inspect it. And as well, when he holds it normally, it looks like he's making the gesture for the world's smallest violin as he's clenching onto this hilariously small axe that, by the looks of it, probably has no right to be able to get a one-hit kill on someone. Looks like you'd be better off throwing it at the enemy, but quite the cute thing that I wanted to share with you guys today. Last up for the news, I wanted to discuss more items from Morello's live stream Q&As, potential changes coming to the game, as well as Morello's discussion on the state of the meta and where it's going. Morello gets asked, is there such a thing as too many agents? And he admits, yes, that it's unlikely that you'll see Valorant get 150 agents like they have champions in League of Legends, but the game can definitely handle more than 20. Again, the release cadence and how many agents they want to pump out has yet to be announced or really determined. Internally, they're discussing some changes to a couple items, like the Guardian might be getting a price change. They're talking about it. Perhaps it's too expensive and can't often be afforded for in the low econ buys that you typically try to go for. However, I will note, I wonder if just not enough players have attempted to buy light shields or glass guardianing certain positions. It might feel kind of crazy, but I think some agents might be able to pull it off. But as it stands, most players opt not to do that on force buys. I just wonder if it's more viable than we think. Morello gets asked about Sage's must-pick status and if he thinks it's going to remain. Along with that, he also discusses and responds to Hiko's claims that there isn't enough utility in the game to force out ops. And this is an answer from Morello that sort of hits two birds with one stone here, saying that, well, yeah, lines of sight from snipers are going to feel hard to deal with if you pick Cypher and Sage. Having two sentinels on your team, you're supposed to be able to be better at defending, and they're not intended to be effective at attacking into sight lines, so ops will be better. I thought this was a really interesting answer from Morello, and as someone who tends to agree with Hiko on this, and knowing that Morello might watch this very video, I would say that I think the top level players are aware that they could pick an overload of entry kits in order to outweigh the strengths that these powerful lines of sight are presenting at high levels of play. But the problem is, say you pick more smokes, right, to block lines of sight so you can go take space. Not much entry kit works well with smokes because the flashes in the game get blocked by line of sight, unlike CSGO. But Valorant, unlike CSGO, allows you to throw all manner of Molotovs into smokes. So because of that, the utility exchange of the game is defensive-sided, on purpose, I think, from the developers. So a team that, let's say, doesn't pick Cypher or Sage, tries to aggress in a way that might counter ops, it just would make them lose easier to the other normal stuff that's already good in Valorant. So for example, Cypher cams can get put up at angles above smokes a lot of times, and Sage's slow orb and wall interrupts engages, even if they don't directly get you kills. When the enemy is trying to execute on a site and block off lines of sight from an op, one slow orb onto the lane that the enemy have to come through can just undo all of that utility and force them to freeze in place rather than take advantage of the space their utility has set up. On top of that, the flashbangs in this game are just really weak. So if you try to pick too much of the entry kit in this game, you get destroyed. Maybe not by ops. You could pick things to counter that. It's just your normal utility would be bad and you would lose anyway. I kind of understand where Morello is coming from, and as a game enthusiast myself, I always try to think of counter meta ideas and break the mold. It's exciting and novel and fun, but I think also is important to be realistic about meta states and why they exist, and realize that a lot of times, yeah, you can force an off meta strategy, but it might just be incredibly flimsy for a different reason. Whereas right now, the highest levels of play, if you pick anything other than Brimstone, Sage, and Cypher as your core 3 agents, you're going to have a very predictable playstyle up against the normal meta comp. And on the top of this, in a separate conversation, Morello admits to Breach not performing particularly well, even at high MMRs, calling him, quote, kinda cheeks, which I find super surprising because Breach is an agent that I think has an incredibly high potential, but at the same time, I think takes the most teamwork and basically requires you to be in a pre-made with the people you're playing with in order to get him to work, because the timings of how you have to play off each other to get Breach to work right are that precise that it's not something you can intuit with a random player. But Morello doesn't state whether this means Breach is going to be getting a look at or any changes. He was originally deemed to maybe be one of the strongest agents in the game, but something that I think may have happened is that because that's kind of the case, a lot of players at the higher tiers are starting to learn how to change their positioning as to not fall victim to Breach. Otherwise, an interesting response to a question asking if they'll ever add an agent with a spell shield that can soak damage from normal abilities, but not bullets, obviously. Morello takes that suggestion and says maybe on a duelist or initiator that they'd be able to run through a molly or raise nade, sort of having a defensive tanky effect. I'm just gonna say it now. This kind of thing would be incredibly strong if you could run through a Sage slow, because everything I was talking about earlier about how the utility is defensive sided, this kind of thing would really open up the aggression of the game. It also sounds like it might be really broken, and I'm afraid of the potential of that, but an interesting idea nonetheless. Morello said he thought it would have very limited application, but depending on how many things it made you immune to, like Cypher Tripwires or Sage Slow, like I said, I think it would be incredible. But in any case, with my yearning for entering to be stronger in this game, Morello does state that there will be more flashes added to the game, but does state that they don't want to do a CSGO-esque pop flash, which if you don't know is when your teammate can throw a flashbang from far away and have it pop right on a corner, giving you no opportunity to react, basically. The closest thing we have to that in Valorant is like a Reyna Lear being tossed around a corner or a Breach flashpoint, but both of them you either can see coming or interact with. It seems like that's a core design difference of Valorant in comparison to CSGO, so you can expect things more of the same in terms of your ability to know that they're coming before they can hit you, I would say is a safe bet to make. But with that, that's everything for today's news roundup video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter. Hit us a follow and come interact with us on there. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Clickheads. We'll see you guys next time.